This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everyone. Alongside Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. We have made it to Friday. A lot to get to today. We're certainly going to talk SU men's and women's basketball, NFL playoffs. We begin with what was just a wild game last night inside the Dome. Syracuse women taking on California, a game that they led by 20 in the second half. You think that it's over, and 40 minutes not enough. 2 overtimes not enough. They went into triple overtime before Syracuse came out on top.
Yeah, I was working the Coach Autry show last night, and I got a full game. We caught the end of the regulation there, like half the fourth quarter, and then the 3 overtimes was great. It just throwing a ball off the opponent's back as a shot to tie the game and in an overtime is bonkers to me. Just the guts to
It's gutsy. Yeah. It's gutsy to do it anytime, but again, the enormity of that situation, right? With not just the game on the line. I don't know if it's overstating it to say season on the line in some ways, in that, like, listen, this team is fighting for an NCAA tournament berth. You can't lose the teams you're supposed to beat, and that was one you were supposed to beat at home. And so with everything on the line last night, 2-point game, under a minute left in double overtime, for Dominique Darius to pass it off the defender's back to herself on an inbounds play and lay it in, took a lot of guts. Perfectly executed, though, and that forced a third overtime, and then she had the big shot in the third overtime, hitting a dagger 3.
Yeah, and just someone turns the slightest as you're doing that.
That's high IQ, Paulie.
It is, but just everything's got to work out. Like, you hit the shoulder blade wrong or anything happens.
Or, the other thing is if you don't establish yourself in bounds, and she almost didn't. It was very close because she deflected it off the back, and she had to get in bounds pretty quickly, get that foot down, which she did, and was able to receive it and lay it in to tie the game and force the third overtime. Layla Felia did get injured in the game a couple times, but ended up leaving with a back injury. So we'll have to kind of monitor her status. She's been so good, of course, putting in 38 points the game prior against Virginia on the road. But that was a very important win for the ladies. Again, it's one of those that it doesn't get you into the NCAA tournament, but a loss maybe at the end of the day would keep you out of the NCAA tournament.
There were so many big shots, too. Sophie Burrows hitting threes. It was fun.
It was.
Tim did a great job.
He
Tim
did.
Leonard listening to him.
It was a lot of fun. First triple overtime game for the SU women since 1998. It's been a while, but it was a big win, 90-87 over Cal. Last thing on the women before we move on. What do you think about that one of the differences in the men's game and the women's game is you could call timeout and you could advance the ball. What do you think? Because we saw, it benefited Cal there at the end of, one of the overtimes.
It's funny, Matt Park asked Coach Autry about that last night, and he goes, I like it when we're on offense, and I hate it when we're on defense. I don't like it. I like you have to get the ball over. I don't like it in the NBA either.
Well, one thing
it makes the game more exciting.
One thing it does, right? It makes the game more exciting. It gives you more of a chance if you got a second and a half or 2 seconds, whatever the case may be. It does eliminate what we saw the other night with SMU. Boopie Miller hitting the half-court shot. Yeah. If you advance the ball, you're not going to see half-court shots anymore. So there is kind of a give and take there. We should touch on the men before we move on to other things. And this one tomorrow certainly falls under that category, Paulie, of, is it a must-win? I don't know, but it's a can't lose. You can't lose this one to Boston College. It's really the last game on the schedule, maybe until the regular season finale against Pittsburgh, that it would be a devastating loss to your resume. Because after you get by BC, it's a lot of quad 2s and quad 1s the rest of the way. This one, though, you can't afford to lose.
Correct. And, and they play well there. It's usually a half orange crowd up there. So, it should be a win for them.
And as soon as we're done here, you're heading there, right?
Correct.
All right. Safe travels. We talked about plenty of other things on the Orange Nation radio show today, including NFL. And there's a lot going on, both with playoff teams and non-playoff teams. Let's start with one of the non-playoff teams, and that is the New York Giants. And by all accounts, they've got a new head coach in John Harbaugh. We keep hearing that it's just about done. It's being finalized. We had our good friend John Schmelk on the radio show today. We kicked him off by asking him exactly where things stand right now with John Harbaugh and the New York Giants. Take a listen.
I'm kind of just waiting around here like everybody else is, just waiting for the T's to be crossed, the I's to be dotted, and if we get this thing done. Lawyers take some time to figure stuff out sometimes. I imagine that's the part of the process they're involved in at this point. All indications, I've seen the same reports you have, that this will get done sooner rather than later, but we're all still in the waiting game mode.
Do you feel like, and again, we've seen the reports about the details, right? 5 years, $100 million. He was getting paid $17 million a year, I guess, with the Ravens, so it's not a huge bump in pay, but it's still a lot of money. Does that number surprise you, that the Giants are willing to shell out $100 million for a new head coach?
No. Not at all. When you have a coach of this caliber on the market, which rarely happens, you're going to set the new standard of what coaches make. I think that's just kind of the way it goes. It's the same way when you get a premium free agent as a player on hit the market at a position. Odds are he's going to end up setting that new market rate for a player at that position. So I think it's similar. A number like that does not make me blink if you look at what some of the other higher paid coaches in the league make. And if you want to get the guy that you want, you do whatever it takes to get him. And that's what the number is. There's no salary cap for coaches, guys. So do what you need to do to get it done.
Whether it's John Harbaugh or not, like let's say John Harbaugh was not available, do you think that was going to be the path they took regardless, that they were going to go after somebody who had a lot of head coaching experience given the way, this recent run has gone?
I think proof in the pudding that the coach has shown that he can win in the NFL, I think was going to be important. And obviously to that, you need some level of experience, right? I don't think it was, all right, well, we have a guy with 5 years experience versus 13 years. Let's definitely pick the guy with 13 years. If the 5-year guy showed that he could win with that level of experience, I think he would have won out. Were they ruling out coordinators that hadn't been a head coach before? No. But I think they would have had to really been shown in meetings that guy had what it takes to be head coach, had a plan. It's hard to do this for the first time in New York. It's not a starter job for a coach. So I do think, having shown the ability and the consistency to build a culture in the building and to win at a consistent level. I'm not sure if you guys looked at this. I'll give you a trivia question. Jim Harbaugh coached the Ravens for 18 years. How many times did he win fewer than 8 games?
Once.
Is
that right?
Do you know how many times the Giants have won more than 8 games in the last 10 years? Twice.
I'm going to go once. Yeah.
So,
me, Steve, I'm on fire.
Needless to say, that level of consistency is something that you can't find everywhere. Those guys don't become available very often. So, to me, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's impressive. You look at this as it's a two-way street, right? Like the Giants had to identify the guy they wanted, but I'm sure John Harbaugh had plenty of options. What was it about the Giants that he was like, you know what? I've got all these options on the table, and I'm not even going to really necessarily entertain the other ones. I want to go there. Let's make it happen. How did the Giants sell him on the job? Yeah,
look, when you get to a point of this with a coach like John Harbaugh, pardon me, it's not the teams interviewing John Harbaugh. It's John Harbaugh interviewing the teams, right? And he was going to pick the team that he wanted to go to. If reports are correct, pretty much every team with a vacancy, except for the Ravens, had interest in hiring him. So he was going to be able to pick the team he wanted to go to. I think there's a few different reasons. One, ownership. And despite the idiotic tweets we all get that the Giants should sell the team, there is still an enormous amount of respect for Giants ownership around the league. John Mara, and again, he's obviously battling an illness right now. We hope he gets better. We're all praying for him. He's on the competition committee where John Harbaugh has spent a lot of time, and they've had a lot of experience interacting there. And I think there is a ton of respect there for the Mara family. His younger brother, Chris, according to Ian O'Connor, has taken a much bigger role in this process, trying to get this thing done. He met first team in person to meet with Harbaugh in person at John Harbaugh's home in Baltimore last weekend. And I think there's an enormous respect for the Mara family, the patience that they show. They don't want to move on from coaches quickly. The fact that they were willing to basically give him whatever he wanted resource-wise moving forward to get this done. From everything I've heard, he had a good back and forth in conversations with Joe Shane, the Giants in-place general manager. And that has gone well, and that's someone he thinks he can work with. There's a collaborative process here. He likes that. Obviously, going to New York, where you can become not just a great head coach, but a legendary head coach, where if you win here, it's a bigger deal. I think that's part of it, too. And then the roster. I think he likes Jackson Dart. And it's not a surprise. Coaches around the league like Jackson Dart. He's a coach's type of quarterback. His personality, the way he approaches things. And look, guys, the Giants, more so than some of the other teams that have fired coaches, have a lot of pieces on the roster, whether it's Malik Neighbors on offense. We'll see how he recovers from the knee injury. Cam Scatteraboo, Andrew Thomas, a franchise left tackle, 2 franchise pass rushers in Abdul Carter, if he gets there, and Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, a franchise defensive tackle. Other teams don't have these pieces in place, and I don't think John Harbaugh thinks this is a long-term rebuild here. Not saying Super Bowl in year 1, but I think he thinks this team can compete for a playoff spot in year 1 in the NFC East. So I think put all that together, that's why the Giants' job was so attractive to John Harbaugh.
I was going to ask you that next in terms of, you listed the factors. I was going to ask you about the roster. Where do you think that ranks on the list of factors? And we probably have to wait until the press conference, but was it that at the top of the list or just somewhere on the list?
I think ownership's always top of the list when it comes to a coach trying to find a place where he's willing to commit to, right? Because I think ownership, the way they deal in the building, the way they deal with coaches, the way they collaborate, the way they give resources, that's always going to be the most important thing to a head coach. The second thing is the roster. And I think the other pieces are important, but I think the overriding factor is having a quarterback here that he believes he can win with. And I think that was very important. And without the quarterback here that makes him believe that he can win with that player, I think we would be having a very different conversation.
All right, we got about 30 seconds left. It sounds like Todd Monken's going to join him as the OC. Any quick thoughts on a DC?
Yeah, there has to be a process with both, by the way, with the Rooney Rule and everything. I think Monken's a really good hire at OC. He'll do a nice job. He's done well with Lamar Jackson. I'd look at Denard Wilson and Anthony Weaver, 2 guys that were defensive coaches in Baltimore with him, names that I've heard out there and that he has connections to. And obviously Zach Orr, too. He was with him last year. I think you look for guys. There's a good lineage of good defensive coaches that have come from the Ravens. Look at those guys, and those are some names that have been attached to the Ravens in the past that I think would make sense here moving forward. But I do expect to interview Charlie Bolin, too, who closed the year as the Giants defensive coordinator, did a really nice job. I think he'll be in the mix as well.
It's our good friend John Schmelk, who works with the New York Giants. No, that's not what I want to say. What do I want to say? What is he officially? Pre- and post-game? Okay, 3, 2, and 1. That's John Schmelk. Does a great job with pre- and post-game with the New York Giants. We're hearing those reports. $100 million over 5 years for John Harbaugh. How much does coaching matter in the NFL, in your opinion?
I of all the major sports, I think it's the most important. It's just that's a lot of money. He's proven, so I can see it, but can you do it in New York is the next question. There's a lot of pressure there.
There is a lot of pressure, but he's got what they think is the franchise quarterback. He's got the franchise receiver. He's got a really good running back. Like, they have some pieces there. So, maybe all it is the coach to bring it all together.
Yeah, and my favorite team lost their coach, Mike Tomlin, and just now seeing the reports of the players did not take it well and are very upset at the fan base.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, because of how this has gone down. They feel like the fan base turned on them. And the players are not happy with the fans.
Interesting. Again, that's an endorsement for Mike Tomlin, and we'll see what's next for him. My favorite team is back in action this weekend, and they've got a game tomorrow on the road in Denver. They took care of Jacksonville last weekend. They've got to win 3 road games in order to get to the Super Bowl, and we know that they are very much depleted at wide receiver. This is going to be a very tall task to go on the road to the top seed, as banged up as they are right now. We had Thad Brown on the Orange Nation radio show today. Thad is the sports director, WROC in Rochester, comes on our show all the time, does a great job covering the Bills, and we led him off with that injury question, right? How much of a concern are all these injuries, especially at the wide receiver position for this team?
At wide receiver, it's more about functionality than talent, because look, if you had said to a Bills fan 2 weeks ago, you're going to have 3 guys at one position group who are going to all go on IR and be done for the year, but you can pick the position group, I think everybody would have picked wide receiver. And even among the receivers, the 2 guys that the Bills get most of the receiving out of right now are Khalil Shear and Brandon Cooks, and they're fine. So what the Bills did lose, though, other than depth, is that Terrell Shavers and Gabe Davis are their best blocking wide receivers, and they're both really good at it. So now there's a number of things that the Bills like to do in the run game that somebody else has to be in front of for, and all those screens they've been throwing to Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, you need new bodies for that as well. That, to me, is the biggest impact about what's being lost, maybe second to Jordan Poyer, who's been fantastic at safety, and now you got a rotation of, do you go to the rookie Jordan Hancock, who has not looked like he's ready for that spot yet? Do you go from DeMar Hamlin, who hasn't played all year and I think has a higher floor because of familiarity with the defense, but as we've seen, probably a pretty low ceiling, or do you go with Darnell Savage, who might be a hybrid of both and is not very exciting? So that will be a problem, but in this particular game, I'm a little less worried about Bo Nix beating me down the middle of the field than I am finding a different way to get after this really good Denver Bronco defense.
All right, let's talk about all the injuries right now. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll talk about other stuff. What's the latest on Ed Oliver?
So, questionable to play, and I'll tell you what, the more I think about it, the more I think he's going to go for a couple reasons. Number one, I think with the bicep injury, and I'm definitely going to wade into dangerous waters of trying to play doctor on the radio here, but with the injury he had, and especially with the point of the season we're in, where there's not a lot of hitting, a lot of fractures or walkthrough, I don't know what you're going to find out about opening a practice window and letting the guy go out there and work out. Maybe a little bit. I think if his practice window is open, there's a decent chance he's ready to go. Now, what ready to go means is anybody's guess. It probably won't be Ed Oliver circa 2023 when he was one of the best defensive players in football. But considering what they have at defensive tackle, you get Ed Oliver at 60-70%, you probably can be fine. Here's the other thing, little behind-the-scenes stuff. The Bills required photographers at the one practice that the Bills had this week on Wednesday to not record any of the individual defensive line drills. Now, defensive line has been a conservative position for this all year long, but this was unusual. And my pretty easy guess is that they don't want anybody to get a look at where Ed Oliver is at. And if you want to really play the logic out, I think it makes more sense to hide a guy who's going to be playing than to hide a guy who's not going to be playing. Again, that's me reading between multiple lines, but you stack all the things together. Obviously, every game is do or die. The Bills could use any kind of help they could get. I think Ed Oliver plays. Any
other injuries we need to be aware of, either for the Bills or Broncos heading into this game tomorrow?
Ty Johnson is the big one for the Bills. Broncos are pretty solid. They actually got a couple of guys who are on IR who, if they win, they might get back next week. J.K. Dobbins, the biggest name, but none of those guys are happening for this game. Ty Johnson's the other one for the Bills, though, who's questionable. He does so many little things on third down, receiving, pass blocking, all kinds of stuff. And it was noticeable the Bills didn't have it last week, even though Ray Davis, to be honest, is a guy that in theory can do a lot of those chores. So whether or not the Bills get him back is a big deal. And then we talk about Ed Oliver, coming back off injury reserve. The Bills could get DeMar Hamlin, as we mentioned, and Curtis Samuel for this game. Not the guy's going to excite you, but it is wild in the divisional round that the Bills could have three players who've been on injured reserve virtually all season, all of a sudden all in uniform for one game.
Yeah, that would be certainly a nice boost for them. Let's go back to the Jacksonville game before we move ahead and kind of break down the Broncos. When you look back on that win over the Jags, what's the one thing that stands out to you? Is it the play of Josh Allen? Is it something else?
Bills had the better quarterback, for sure. That's what it was. And Josh Allen didn't have to be Superman. I've been comparing him. He was more like Clark Kent. He was smart. He was prudent. He was making good decisions. He was winning between the ears, not winning flying over guys in a single bound. And it's kind of exciting to see Josh Allen win playoff games that way. He was just clean. No turnover-worthy throws, just did all the right things. Tough for sure. I mean, the guy's got 17 injuries right now, and he's still out there, fighting to the goal line in a couple different plays. But when you compare it to what Trevor Lawrence did, he probably equally is physically a talented player, but yet Trevor Lawrence throws a terrible interception early in the game. Trevor Lawrence on a 4th and 2 that he probably should run for. It's him and Shaq Thompson in space for 2 yards, but he slips or he dives too soon. And even the interception at the end of the game, I know it's a spot where you got to score there, but you can have an opportunity to not throw a ball into terrible coverage. So in this time of year, you don't have to be a superhero to win games. You just got to do you got to execute all game long. And Josh Allen did a wildly better job of that than Trevor Lawrence did last week.
You talk about the fact that the Jags on that last possession had to score. They had a little more time to score than some fans would have liked, right? And so maybe didn't have to force that ball in there because they've got a great kicker and they didn't have to move the ball all that far. Curious to get your thoughts on how Sean McDermott handled the clock management of that goal goal line situation. A lot of people were talking about, take a knee there or try not to score on first down, run 30 seconds off the clock, call timeout, and then you've got 3 cracks from the one. Where do you stand on how they handled it?
It's funny. I've gone like multiple different ways. I'll take you through my whole line of thinking. In the moment, well, first of all, in general, in that spot, I always say you got to score. You can't play the clock if you have to score. You got to score first. But in that moment, I was like, man, this is one of the rare instances where I can make an argument. You try and take a knee, and then your sneak's going to get in, and if you give me 3 chances, and then the Jags don't have as much time. But I think that the place I land on is what the Bills did there, right? Well, you still can win the game by having your defense get a stop, which is what happened. Even if that doesn't happen, the Jags probably don't score a touchdown. So then you can still win the game in overtime. So you have opportunities to win the game. If you screw up the whole I'm going to kill 40 seconds and then score thing, then you lose. The game's over. There's no other opportunity. And I do realize that the likelihood of the Bills not scoring even after taking a knee there is low, but I still think you score the points and you try and win another way as opposed to getting cute, because even though it seems easy, just take a knee or just go down at the goal line, if you take a knee and go back 1.5 yards, now you can't sneak, A. And B, if you're asking Josh Allen I want you to run forward, but only run forward 6 inches and don't score, I think asking a guy to do something he's never done before in that spot is probably asking for more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, and right, you could have a false start, or there's a lot of things that could go wrong there. Although, yes, and Paulie brought that. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because you're all agreeing with him when he said
no,
it.
I
argued with me when I.
No, I'm not arguing with you. I do think I was in the camp, Thad, of the take some time off the clock. I get that things could go wrong, like you said. In all likelihood, we saw them run a 10-yard tush push, right? I think they're getting in from the 2, and I know you think they're getting in from the 2 as well. But it's it worked out. It worked out in their favor, and they move on, and they've got the top seed now on the road. So let's turn our attention to that. And I know a lot of people going into the game last week said Jacksonville scares you more than the Broncos do, or the winner of this game has the inside track to the Super Bowl potentially. Where do you stand on this Broncos team? I know they're the top seed. How dangerous do you think they are? Do you think they're the best team in the AFC?
No, I think they're probably the worst team in the AFC. It's still playing right now, to be honest. The more I dig on them, the less impressed I get. The defense, even though if you go to things like yards allowed per play, third down defense, red zone defense, they're 1 or 2 in like everything. They're ridiculous. And most sacks in the NFL by a lot. There's a lot of things they do well. But they don't play a ton of great offenses. They played 6 in the top 12 in EPA per play all year. They had a stretch between weeks 11 and 17. They played 6 games. 4 of them were against those top 12 offenses. Well, in that stretch, the defense was 17th in EPA per play allowed. So all of a sudden, the Broncos against good teams, they look kind of average. And there isn't, whether you want to talk about the defense or the team as a whole, there's not a signature game on their schedule which makes you say, that's the team that could go to a Super Bowl. They gave up 26 to the Packers a few weeks ago. They got hammered by Jacksonville, frankly, handled might be the better word, 34-20. They gave up 26 to Washington a few weeks ago, and a team that runs the ball pretty well, which is another kind of scheme within the scheme discussion that the Broncos are better as a pass defense than a run defense, which favors the Bills. So there's not a thing that I look at and say, this is something that makes me nervous about the Broncos. Now, the Bills had to play last week, and as we talked about, accumulated a fair number of nicks and cuts, whereas Denver just hung around and chilled and got rested up. That's not nothing. And Denver's still home. That's also not nothing. So it's not like I think the Bills win in 99 out of 100 scenarios, but I feel pretty good that this is a game that favors the Bills in a lot of different matchups.
One thing that, kind of my research of this game that I keep coming back to is James Cook. It seems like, a lot of people are high on him to have a big game against this Broncos defense. You talked about the fact that 2 of their best blocking receivers are out. Do you expect, given the fact that the receivers are banged up, do you expect a healthy dose of James Cook in this game?
I think so, just because I think it's probably the better way to go about attacking the Broncos. It is what they're weaker against. The Bills did a good job with it against Denver last year in the playoffs. It's largely a similar defense. Like I said, even the Commanders of all teams went for 150 on the ground against Denver. So you can do it. And this is what the Bills want to do. Even if the Bills had receivers healthy, it's still by far the weakest position group on the team. If you have your druthers as Joe Brady, you want to hand the ball to James Cook as much as possible, because when the Bills do that really well, they win very comfortably. So that's going to be certainly game plan part A. Obviously, when plan B is Josh Allen, you're doing pretty good as a team. But I do think that attempting to get James Cook going is certainly going to be a priority.
What do you think this game ultimately comes down to, and what's your prediction?
I think the Bills just got to stay out of obvious passing situations, and whether that be within a series, so don't get into 3rd and 8. If you can avoid it, that means running the ball. It means being efficient on 1st and 2nd down. And I think the other part of it is don't get behind by 2 scores. If you let the Broncos pin their ears back and unleash this pass rush that just wants to attack over and over and over, that's where the Bills get into trouble. And the funny thing is when the Broncos have Pat Surtain, one of maybe the best corner in the league, we've talked about the Bills facing elite corners all year and kind of laughed about it in that, the receiving core is so bad, who do you put that guy on? Brandon Cooks has actually emerged enough to where you now have something that the other team's number 1 corner can, in theory, take away and really cause a problem. So even though it's Josh Allen, even though the Bills have come from behind all year long, this is not a spot where I think the Bills want to be trying to rally from 10 or 17 down in the second half. And the other thing, too, we talked about what's good about the Broncos or what's scary about the Broncos. Like the Bears, they have some dumb ability to pull games out late this year. So you want to have a comfortable lead, because whatever Bo Nix has, apparently it gets enhanced in the 4th quarter. Don't mess around with having to try and put Denver away up 3 or 4 at the end of this game.
All right. You think the Bills were going to win this game?
33-21, I got Buffalo. Yeah, right. I think it'll be relatively comfortable.
What about the other one, Patriots-Texans?
I think the Texans defense, if you took the 8 teams left and ranked them by the 16 units, offense and defense, Texans defense is number 1. And they might just be a force of nature that is too much for anything to handle. And when I mean anything, I don't just mean Drake May. I mean Josh Allen. I mean Matt Stafford. I mean Brock Purdy. I mean anything that's left going on right now. We'll see, because the offense, especially if Nico Collins can't go, might not be enough. That New England game, you could give me the under 20.5 points, and I might sign up for that right now.
That's Thad Brown, sports director, WROC in Rochester. 4:30 kick tomorrow between the Bills and Broncos in Denver. The winner takes on the winner of the Patriots and Texans for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Do you have a rooting interest, Paulie, in any of the games this weekend?
Don't care. Just gonna watch. Just gonna watch the best and the brightest go head to head.
All right, that's fair. Anything you want to touch on before we go?
I'm about to get in the car and head to Boston, Steve. How many miles do I have to drive to get there?
How many miles? Man, I'm horrible at this. How many miles would one have to drive?
For the amount of driving I do, I'm terrible at it, too.
Roughly 500?
313.
Okay. It wasn't too far.
You've gone over.
I've gone over.
Your little yodeler fell off the mountain.
Price is Right. We're dating ourselves. If you don't know that reference, then you're probably under the age of 30. If you're our age, though, you know exactly what we're talking about. All right, we got to go. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. Enjoy the SU men's basketball game. Women back in action against Stanford inside the Dome on Sunday. And a great weekend ahead of NFL action. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.